Normally, I would never tear down 2 engines from the same manufacturer for 2 consecutive weeks. I like to keep some diversity on the channel. However, last week, we didn't really tear down an engine, did we? We tore down an EV power unit out of an ID4 or Audi e-tron. So I do have another Volkswagen thing on the stand, but it's not a motor. This is an engine out of a 2010 Volkswagen GTI. Now, I chose this engine because of what happened last week. Last week, there were no pistons, there were no rods, there's no spark plugs. There wasn't a combustion palace to even have Malice in, and I know that left a certain segment of my viewers needing more, feeling like there was a void. So for this week, I have the engine in the entire shop with the most carnage. This is it. This is the most blown up engine I have in my shop right now, and we're going to tear this thing down just to see how much carnage there is. This is the second generation of Volkswagen's EA888 4-cylinder engines. This is a 2-liter turbocharged direct injected engine that produces 200 horsepower and 207 pound-feet of torque when you leave them alone. Now, normally I would never say that after I tell you how much power it makes or talk about the engine, but the fact that this is out of a 2010 GTI is one red flag. The second red flag, aside from the fact that you can see a connecting rod hanging out of the front of it, well, I have to show you. So it may be hard to notice, but it probably isn't. It has a forged diverter valve or bypass valve, which is only installed on cars that people want to hear the sound of air being released from the charge piping. Not saying anything bad about these whatsoever, but typically cars that have stuff like this are driven slightly harder than normal. That's the nicest way to put it. Now on to the actual damage, and this is why I picked this engine for this week. It is, it's pretty apparent the more you look, the worse it gets. There's the big end of the rod. The block's all broken out, pretty much from like here all the way down. I have no idea how bad this is going to be. I don't know anything about this, unfortunately. I don't know the miles. I don't have a VIN. I don't have any way of looking that up, but I can tell you that oil filter plus that, and the fact it was out of a GTI, spells trouble. Now, I don't know about you, but the first thing I want to do when I get an engine that has a rod hanging out of the front of the block is see if it turns over. You got to know. Now, I do have the short bar on it, but we can always upgrade. Yeah, let's get the slightly larger bar. Actually, let's try to go the other way. Oh, see? It's fine, actually. We're fixing it. See, it's fine. I can hear compression leaking out of it. It's bad. Now the first thing I'd like to do is pull the spark plugs. Oh, we need blue for this one. What is happening to this? Well, I have one that doesn't seem to want to come out. That feels like it might work. I got the rubber out. Hey, now it's coming out. Well, this is probably the worst looking set of plugs we've seen in a long time, and they're not even Autolites. So for beginners, cylinder 2's plug has been mechanically regapped to 0. Apparently the piston needed no gap at all. None. And then cylinder 3, could park some of my cars in that gap. And these 1 and 3 look really terrible. Well, they all look terrible, but the only one that looks any kind of okay is that one. That one looks decent, but the rest of these, terrible. Well, clearly the spark plugs were the problem because that one was bad. So now it should turn over just fine. I mean, Uncle Rodney's right here, so I don't know what the problem is. Time to start removing the turbocharger. Let's get the oil return removed. 2 different bolts.
Someone's been here.
Tons more room. A few more things to do before we start unbolting the turbo itself. A crankcase ventilation thing that's becoming a problem. All right, let's get the turbo unbolted. I don't think I need to take these off it. Maybe I do. This one is right behind the turbo stud. I don't know what you're supposed to do here. Gently do one of these numbers. One of those. Oh, I guess I could have taken the bolt out. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. There's a nut right here on a stud. I don't know if I need to take this out or not, but if you do, that seems really dumb. I feel like this just pivots on this. It's been a little while since we tore one of these down. And I don't work on these cars, like, ever. Ah, yes, I think we can just pick this up. Yes. So from what I can tell, this is a factory turbocharger. Doesn't look aftermarket. The only aftermarket thing on here is this. And how much fun is that to install unless the turbo's out? Now, it's not real easy to take a look to see what kind of condition this is in because of the design of the compressor housing, but we can look at the exhaust wheel, and it seems to spin okay. I don't see any major cracks. There's not a ton of shaft play. Turbo feels good, but these turbos are, I mean, I don't think I've ever sold one, and if I have, I didn't remember it because it must not have been a ton of money. But if somebody wants this for their, lawnmower or something, need a little more oomph for that tall grass this season, just let me know. Now, even though the front of this engine is an absolute catastrophe, the back, it looks fine. There's not a single sign of what has gone on in the front, in the back. Don't take that the wrong way. So this is a Fram Extra Guard, and I don't know if these are bad or good filters. I just don't normally see these on 2 liters, and apparently He-Man put this thing on. Let me get some small pliers here. It's gonna make a mess. I should probably have a pan underneath it. Oh, it's fine. I know what you're thinking. For it to make a mess, it would have to have oil in it. Well, you're right. We'll cut this open. Oh boy. Well, let me show you what I just found, and we'll cut this open by the end of the video. So, sparkles. Forbidden glitter. We're not surprised. Now we're going to start on the intake side of the engine. Let's get some breather hose off. Give me a little push of fuel. This doesn't want to let go. This has been into before. It's got some like standard grade 8 hardware. It's lovely. I am relatively certain that's not the right bolt. Well, I guess we'll have to take the throttle body off. Yeah, that's how you do it. Let's see if the intake will just fall right off now. There's still some things and stuff. Oh, one of those bolts wasn't there anymore. What am I fighting with here? Fuel line here, maybe that'll help. Oh, we're leaking gas. Let's see if blue will help us out. It's probably the wrong answer, but it's the answer. That's all it took. Just got to get blue involved. Oh, we're leaking copious amounts of things. It's the injection harness that comes with it. That goes with it. Oh, there's one injector. That's what it was. We are leaking more gas than I thought possible. But we're off. Well, the intake ports are absolutely filthy. I mean, look at that. The buildup. Catch can would have done this engine wonders, but it does look like those valves might be bent. It's probably full of fuel or oil or both. I just can't believe how much junk there is on these. Let's get this engine mount bracket off. The next thing I need to do is pull the dipstick tube. Dipstick's gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be fine. We just gotta think happy thoughts and not look at it or think about it, and it's gonna be just fine. Once I get all the bolts out, that is. See, it came right out, no problems. Next, we're gonna take the upper timing cover off. That's boogered up. Oh boy. We just give it a little. Nice. All right, well, we'll do what we must. And we must do that. Most of the time that works. Not every time. I think that was good. So from the very beginning, this looks pretty clean. I don't really see any issues here. There's not a lot of varnish in here. This looks clean. No signs of trouble in this area of the engine. Now I think we're going to remove the oil filter housing, which is also the accessory bracket, which is broken from the destruction. It has the oil cooler built in, and there's the water pump, which is really unfortunately damaged. I'm going to shed a tear, but let's get this unbolted and see what happens. I think that's probably not all of them, but I think that's all of them. Oh, I think we did it. All right, do you think there's any more damage that we haven't seen yet? Oh, we're dropping pieces? What is it? That looks like it's part of the engine. Oh, that's real bad. So in case you, the more you look, the worse it gets. In case you didn't know what you're looking at, this is a connecting rod. This is a balance shaft. And this is what's left of the block. This is rough. You can almost get this rod out right now. We could probably fix this thing, guys. Let's keep going. Let's remove bits of block here. It's pretty early on in the teardown to be looking at a connecting rod, but you know, it is a Volkswagen. That can't be all of them, can it? And we're not done. Let's get this, I think it's crankcase component off. I think this thing was leaking. That's why it's so rusty. All right, that should be enough for me to get this component off. Didn't really reveal too much. This looks like I shouldn't be doing that by hand. Oh, wow. So, that was just an extra piece hanging out there. That's not supposed to happen. No! No, that's for later. That didn't just happen. No, there's nothing to see there. Nothing to see there at all. So the water pump is belt driven off of the broken balance shaft. I mean, normally they're not broken, but in this case it's broken and the water pump's broken, and unfortunately, you know, being broken, it's just no good. It's not good. It's bad, which is the opposite of good. Now that's what I call a snack pack. All right, let's get this crank pulley off. One thing I'd like to point out is the back side of this and this. Only these engines, well, some Volkswagen engines have, this is called a hearth joint. And you can only go on one way because it has a locating notch right here. It's pretty ingenious, requires no special tools, which is really nice. It either fits or it doesn't. Next, it's time to unbolt the lower timing cover. I'm going to move the pan. That one is boogered up. This should do it. That didn't do it. We just didn't do it. Didn't try hard enough. That better do it.
That did it.
Let's go ahead and pry the lower timing cover off. Oh, I missed a screw or a bolt. One more to get. It's a lot easier now. Well, we have some bad stuff going on in here. The chain. Oh, wow. Well, guys, we have a timing chain tragedy. Look at the gears. Look at the teeth on that balance shaft gear. They're gone. Chain has removed itself. It's wedged in there. Yeah, this engine's properly spent. Ooh, smoke. I think we're going to have to take the tension off the chain. So we're going to get the rails unbolted. Next, we'll unbolt the chain tensioner. That's under a little bit of pressure. Not too much. One rail. This one, I don't know that this will come out. Ah, yes. There we are. Okay, tension is, that's all happy. So the rails look pretty good, but when I set them here, a little chunk came off right there. It locates this, so you can see this is starting to separate, and it's unfortunately no good. This one doesn't look too bad. Looks to be an original component. But this one is just not worth it anymore. All right, now we're gonna clean off the top of the valve cover because it's the next step. And the valve cover actually has the cam caps integrated into it. So when we unbolt the valve cover, the cam caps are part of it. I think that's it. Ah, yeah, that's it. Some more cleanup here. Let's get this high pressure fuel pump removed. Man, everything's so crusty on this engine. It's almost like it's from St. Louis. There's our high pressure fuel pump. And now the vacuum pump. I think that's it. I'm going to zip out the outer corner valve cover bolts. Now we can cram these bolts loose. Uh-oh, that one was loose. Oh, let's go ahead and zip these out. Well, it did a pretty good job at trying to remove itself already. Peel this thing off and see what it looks like. Well, now I think these come out with this. So the cylinder head has some really deep grooves in it. Not every single journal looks like that. but the fact that any do means this head it's done. Now, obviously, we know that something got hit because the spark plug was regapped, but I try to hope for the best, but in this case, I don't think this head's going to make it. We don't know what the other side looks like. Let's go look at the cams and the valve cover. Valve cover, pretty deep grooves here. Looks like some debris ran through here, or it was run dry, or both. There's no rule that that says it can only be one. And look at that right there. And the camshafts seem to fare okay. They would definitely need a polish. I don't know. These are pretty torn up. The more you look, the worse it gets. You can definitely feel it with your fingernail through my glove. So, I'm going to say that these are no bueno. Scrap bin bound. Now we're going to get these 4 bolts to hold the head to the block. These are not the head bolts. I mean, technically they are head bolts. Just let that fall down in there. So I turned this thing a little bit at an angle so it's easier to get the head bolts out, and it's draining some minty, cleanly fresh oil. That's another red flag. And now it is time to break the head bolts loose. The fact that they're not making any noise is highly suspicious. Oh, there's a thing in here that's not supposed to be here. So I'm not sure what this is. We're going to find out. What is that, guys? I don't recognize it. It's beat up, whatever it is. Maybe we'll find out where that came from. Well, the head gasket looks fine. That's the only thing that looks fine. Jiminy, wow. So let's look. Cylinder 1 looks okay. Cylinder 2, well, you can see that there's quite a lot of wreckage in there. A lot more than there's supposed to be. And then it gets back to somewhat normal. I have my doubts. I still have my doubts that all of this is going to be fine except for one cylinder. There's a lot of junk on this one. I think what we're going to do is some science. I think we're due some science. It's that time. All right. That was unrelated. We're just going to skip the hole. So, I mean, what's there is good, maybe. Let's take a look at the cylinder head. I'm going to start at the back. Don't worry, I've had my shots. 3 and 4. 4 and 3 look good. 2 has definitely had some impact marks by the piston. I would bet that all of these valves are bent. Maybe not a ton, but I mean, it's if you're not first, you're last. And then this one looks okay. So the crazy thing is I don't see a lot of debris from this cylinder or this cylinder. Like I don't see anything like something blew up in this cylinder, just the impact marks. Remember I said there's no signs of damage on this side of the block? Well, I just didn't look close enough because that's definitely cracked. It's about a 2-inch long crack right above Germany. I don't know where that is geographically. The next thing I need to do is drain the bearing juice out of this thing, because I have a feeling it's got some Earl in there mixed with some, it's probably a bearing slurry. Uh-oh. The drain bolt doesn't feel good. More red flags. And the threads are shiny. That's not right. Oh yeah. Look at that fresh oil. RTV on the crush washer. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a genius that worked on this thing. It's all coming together now, or should I say, coming apart. While this thing is draining, we're going to continue stripping the timing system. I have no idea what's happening, but stuff is happening. That tensioner looks good. The timing gear has another hearse joint right there. It's kind of a cool piece. We got one. Whew, man, what a beauty. Timing chain out. That one is stuck. This one we'll get out once we get triple square in here to get the rest of this apart. So these timing guides all look pretty good. This one has a little imprint from whenever this catastrophe had occurred, and they're full of sparkly glitter. But you could definitely clean these and reuse them. All right, we got one more chain that I think we can, yeah, it's a little on the short side, but I think that'll do just fine. And this one, I was looking for some damage, and I didn't see any. It looks like the gear broke first. Now we're going to focus on the holy side of the engine. Rather religious, if I don't say so myself. And it looks like the balance shaft is broken. This is actually now an RR shaft. It's a rod removal shaft because it wants to kick this out. We can just go ahead and get that removed. Ah, that's impressive. That might be the worst one we've seen in a long time. I keep saying that, but this part of it seems to spin okay. But this part, not so much. Let's start zipping some of these out, see what happens. I don't have a lot of expectations here. Oh. We might actually come apart. That's bad. That's good. Well, the part of the balance shaft spins that I didn't think was going to spin. Let's see if we can knock this thing out. I think it's going to be a no. Oh! Blue. It's not supposed to look like that. It spins nice still. This engine has all kinds of trinkets. All right, let's remove the other balance shaft and see how that comes out. I need blue to pop that one out. Doesn't seem to want to move. I'm sure it has nothing to do with what happened inside. Yeah, that's going to have to stay there until we get a little further. Normally I turn this engine upside down to pull the lower party platter out of it, but since I believe there's all kinds of fragments of abnormal engine operation, I don't want to be picking that stuff out of the rotating assembly. So I'm going to unbolt the lower oil pan in its current situation, hopefully avoid the mess. That one was stripped. This whole engine's been apart, I think. Oh, that one's unhappy. We just have the one. No? Huh. Well, that's interesting. Nope. Okay, we're just going to work around it. There's a lot of RTV here. Wow. Well, we got started. Oh, there's some loose stuff in there. I still have one broken bolt, or stripped bolt in it. I gotta figure that out. Oh yeah. Well, there's all kinds of goodies in here. Unfortunately, the person that put this together before stripped that bolt. Let's see, now that I've wiggled the pan back and forth, maybe it'll come out? Not a chance. Fine piece of hardware. That's interesting. So this is just hanging off the side of the engine right now, but I had to show you this. This is so much RTV. I have not seen this level of RTV in at least 2 or 3 weeks. There is so much. I don't even know what. Oh. There's so much wrong with this engine. How did all of this end up in here? And can I have this? I would like this. If I just keep going like this, I can metal fatigue it. Will you just finish the job? We're getting there. I'm panning for gold here. I feel like Dan Hurd right now. Let's see if we can get some pickers out of this. And we're off. This is, I can't get past the volume of RTV. And you know what's sad is this thing was covered in oil like it was leaking anyway. That just goes to show you it is not true. The bigger the glob, the better the job is not a true statement. So let's see what we've got here. That's piston, ring, ring, ring.
Banana phone.
That's a rod cap bolt. That's a rod cap bolt. That's a rod bearing. There is so much stuff in here. The craziest thing that I saw in here is actually this. That is the cap from an oil jug. I wish I was making that up. I didn't put that in there. That has been in here. Let's scoop all this floppy stuff out. This is quite a bit of carnage, guys. I mean, we've had some bad engines on the channel. This is thick and super pasty. It's still a pile of rubble, but the scariest thing is this right here. It's not the 48 gallons of RTV that held the pan on. It's this. That could have killed this engine. I'm going to rotate this over slowly. I feel like there's still a bunch of junk in there. So I don't think I'm going to go all the way over. I think I'm going to go just to a point where we can see what is happening. Or we hear stuff start moving inside. Like that. Oh, wow. There's a lot of carnage in there. I can already tell you. Let's see if we can remove this plastic windage tray without making a mess. It's raining engine pieces. What do you think? I feel like there's more. Yes, there is. There's one more over here. Couple little piston nuggets. Oh, we have damage. So there's the pickup with the circlip in it. It's fine. Doesn't go there. And we can see there's a section of piston poking through the upper oil pan. And it looks like a piece of connecting rod. And an extra hole just to make things, symmetrical underneath rod and piston number 3. So I think, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to drop the oil pump next. We're going to get the oil pump off and we'll see what's inside. Oh, we're leaking, but I got a piece of pig mat down, so we're okay. Oh, so here's the oil pump. There's a chain. This thing is locked up solid. There's a head of what looks like it could be a rod cap bolt on there. There's a couple pieces of piston. I don't really know why it's locked up yet. Let's pull the pickup off of it and see if we can knock anything out of the screen. All right, that comes right out. Let's see what's inside of this. There's a ton of stuff in there, actually. Not a good place to store your extra engine parts. It does hold quite a bit. There's another big piece. I think we got the majority of it out. It's still got a bunch of metal in there, but this was all of that was inside of there. That's impressive. Well, this oil pump is locked up, so it should make getting this gear off pretty easy. I don't know if that's going to help us take it apart, but I felt like taking that out. Uh-oh. What's going on here? I don't know why we just stripped two of those. That doesn't make any sense. They are like totally stripped. What the heck just happened? I have no idea what's going on here, guys. I'm losing it. All right, I've got a triple square hammered into the last bolt. I actually got another bolt out this way. So if this doesn't work, I'm not going to be surprised. But if it does work, I'm going to be surprised. Oh man, it's tight. Yeah. Oh, she's leaking. Ooh, that sounded like we're getting somewhere. Oh. Okay. Well, there's some gritty stuff in here, and I'm pretty sure that doesn't go there. Let's get this cleaned up. Well, besides the fact it's got fresh oil, you can see how much it was grinding away at the housing here. And the actual parts of the oil pump themselves have some pretty good wear too. You can see there's lots of scratches and dings. And there's so much like small metal fragments that it was really difficult to get this all cleaned off. So I kept finding more. This housing has a bunch of little bitty debris pieces. You can see them. And I think that's why this thing was locked up, because that stuff found its way everywhere. All right, now we're going to unzip the upper. Now we're going to take off the upper oil pan. Nope, that's it. All right, let's see if this has any gifts for me. Oh, I think that's a resounding yes. Hey. There's some piston nuggets. Ooh, that's just sprayed me in the face with some oil. Yeah, it's fine. So here's what the inside of the upper oil pan looks like. There's the connecting rod cap, slightly misshapen. We've got two very large piston nuggets right there. That'll go back together later. And lots of small shards. There's an oil squirter, some ringgits. It's bad. Look at the impact marks here and there. Broke all this out, broke all this out. We're going to find damage throughout this engine. All right, now we can finally turn this thing upside down. Hopefully it doesn't make a giant mess, but it might. It's okay, we've got plenty of pigment here. Let's see what this looks like. Oh, it's bad. Nobody's surprised, but it's bad. So here's what we're working with. You can see everything in line with cylinder 2 is just destroyed. But I bet that some of those pieces have found their way into this area because there's definitely some marks on the bottom of the rod cap here and even over here. Cylinder 1 seems to, I see some damage there too. Yeah, there's damage everywhere. It's all bad. Even some damage to the trigger wheel over here. But now what we need to do is we need to get the crank bolt and see if we can turn this over so we can get it apart, because where this is here and where that is and where that is, we're not going to be able to get it apart unless the crankshaft moves. Well, I hit a small snag, not a big one. The crank is drilled all the way through, so when you put this in here, it goes all the way through and gets in the way of number 1's connecting rod. So if I bury this thing down here, it's going to be locked up no matter what. So I have to find some alternative method to turn this engine over. That did it. All right, now that I tapped it loose, I think I can just, yeah, look at that. Perfect. Now I have only 3 rod caps to get loose. You just give it to me. All right, let's see if we can knock cylinders 1 and 3 loose. Now it's time to unbolt the main caps. No, that's bad. So this tried to strip out, or it did strip out, and it could be because it's related to the slight block deformation. Ah, yes. And you were worried. I was worried. I think we're all worried. That one, it's getting there. See if we can do the old razzle dazzle, lift the crank. That did it. Oh no, the engine stand, what have I done? I know that didn't work, but let's try the same thing again. Oh, we're so close. I'm gonna have to unbolt the stand just a hair. That should do it. I don't know if it will, but it should. Oh, we're not done. We have more parts that need to come out. That may not, actually, because of what has happened to them. I don't think this one may not come out. I sure want it to, though. Maybe we just need a bigger bar. If this doesn't do it, which it may not. Am I missing something? There is nothing else that holds that in, but it could be the impact marks on the inside of the block are pinning it. That is very unsatisfactory to me. I do not like that. What if I just give it a little... That's good for it. I'm waiting for the comments of people that are saying, how am I supposed to put this back together? Oh, I heard a pop. It made a noise. The end of this bar is so worn down. Probably ought to take it to the grinder. I think it's safe to say that might just have to stay.
Would you like to make things by the bay? I just may.
A better angle for this. The brakes are on, but this doesn't weigh enough. I don't think my slide hammer is going to touch this thing. And it's not threaded. I don't think I can do squat with this. It is very upsetting not being able to get a piece of scrap out of a piece of scrap before I throw the scrap in. Very upsetting. There is still this, though. That is not going to work. But you know what might work? Where's blue? If I jam this thing up, this might do it. I don't remember if this is right-hand thread or not, but we're going to keep going. Ooh, I think it goes the other way. It is a Volkswagen product after all. I didn't mean anything by that. Oh yes, we have success. I mean, had I gone a little stronger the other direction, it would have come off too. It just wouldn't have been right, and it would have ruined the balance shaft. Now I think we should be able to... This might have 2 exits here. Oh yeah, look at that. I took a shortcut. Okay, we're all done taking stuff apart. And let's look at the best rod bearing, well, the second best rod bearing set in the engine. Not great, not terrible. Excuse the mess here. That's all I can find that's left of the rod bearing for this one. That's it. And then cylinder 3 looks good again. Cylinder 4 starting to come apart. This is actually kind of stuck, not fused. I wouldn't say it was terrible, but obviously that's bearing damage. We're going to have to grind the crank to reuse it. Onto the main bearing, since we're right here. A few of these, I've definitely seen some debris run through here. They're not totally trashed, but I obviously got signs of oil starvation and debris. On to the rest of this destruction. So this is a mess of things that is very hard to identify. I can see there's some ringlets in here. I fished out what I could easily identify as piston. That's block. This is really rough. But let's get to the rods and pistons. Cylinder 1. That oil control ring is plugged up pretty good. It is free, however. It's not stuck in the land of the rings. I would say moderate at worst skirt wear, but if you come down here, the end of the rod, even all of the rod, looks like it got in fights with flying shrapnel from its crazy neighbor. Connecting rod number 2, throwing itself around. It broke the head off of this one. Stretched this one off. I bet just pulled the threads right out. And this is probably the craziest piece of the entire engine. It broke the wrist pin using the connecting. I've never seen one break like this. I mean, obviously, a wrist pin failure is almost unheard of. These are indestructible. But to smash the rod around it, this is incredible. And it still moves around just fine. It just doesn't come out that way. Probably would come out that way, but why would I take such a masterfully built piece of artwork apart? I just wouldn't do it. And that rod is destroyed, and what likely happened is this bearing deleted itself, and it was hammering up and down until it shattered the piston when the piston hit the head a few times, and it probably also pulled this part apart when that happened. This whole thing failed at one time. And then cylinder 3, innocent bystander, some chips out of the skirt. The rest of the piston appears to be okay, but again, you go down to the actual rod itself, and look how beat that is. This thing was waging war with its neighbor. Now, thankfully, I have good neighbors, so I don't have to worry about this kind of thing, but I mean, look, it took a bite out of crime. This is probably the nicest rod in the entire engine, and by nicest, I mean it has the fewest battle wounds. It's incredible. And the crankshaft, well, she's a goner, guys. This thing is so deformed. So many impact marks. You can't count. I can't count that high. It actually started peening over parts of the cast of the crank. It's incredible. The amount of damage. This thing is there's no way this isn't bent from this. This was a, I mean, look at that. There's your hammer. And of course, there's your offending rod journal right there. The rest of these are in varying condition. That one looks pretty rough. And actually the trigger wheel on the crankshaft, if I remember right, has a few marks on it. It's deformed. Right there, you can see it's kind of bent. That's going to cause a misfire. And we are not done. So this is the gear that drives the balance shaft that we were able to remove. And look how it just shredded the teeth on that thing. And here's the balance shaft that came out in 2 pieces. Now this is probably a first for the channel, and please correct me if I am wrong. We have never had a broken balance shaft come out of an engine. Sure, plenty of damaged ones, but this must have been like a metallurgy defect that caused... No, I'm just kidding. This was a very violent break. I just can't believe it shattered that, but this thing clearly blew up in the red. And I'm not talking about temperature, I'm talking about the tachometer. Moving on to the block, and I do realize that this is upside down, and I apologize, but this is where that balance shaft lived. As you can see, everything in this area is crumbling around it. And on the opposite side, there's some damage there and several impacts here. And this right here is what's keeping this balance shaft in place. And I mean, I could just beat this to nothing to get this out, but I'm not going to do that. I don't really think that there's a return on that investment of effort, but let's rotate this over so we can see some more. There's a better look. You can see it deleted 2 oil squirters, cylinders 1 and 2. Lots of damage. There's still some shrapnel in here. You can see the bore is really beat. Let's flip this thing over. Cylinder 1 looks pretty decent. Cylinder 2, not so much. Lots of heavy damage. This is actually pretty good considering what the bottom of this engine looked like. And cylinders 3, you can see some debris got caught in the rings. Cylinder 4 looks all right. And as promised, a quick look into the oil filter, and all of the pleats have metal in them, which means that it had enough oil to circulate all of the metal debris, at least to get it to the filter. It's not totally packed, but every single one of these is shiny, and it's not supposed to be. It's clear that whoever worked on or owned or drove this car, and it was likely all the same person, they didn't know to care, and they didn't care to know the right way of how to take care of this thing to where it would last. There wasn't one single thing I could point my finger to that I could say, this caused the demise of this engine, because there were many. It could have been the piece of foil off the top of an oil jug found its way to the pickup and starved it of oil. It could have been a little bit of the 48 pounds of RTV that found its way to the wrong oil passage, clogged it up, and starved it of oil. It could have been allowed to burn enough oil and not kept the proper level, and it could have just run low on oil. Or it could have been tuned within an inch of its life and it blew up. One thing is for sure, it's definitely a combination of many of those things. This thing definitely blew up with not enough oil in it, being run the snot out of. This wasn't an idle failure in a parking lot on a Sunday morning parking at church. This was a 130 mile an hour wide open throttle pass down the highway. Lucky the car didn't catch on fire. I think it just blew the wrong side of the block apart for that to happen. If it had blown the turbo side, all that heat from the exhaust, that catches a lot of cars on fire when engines fail. Now, I am not a huge Volkswagen or Audi fan. I'm really not. But this isn't an example to judge these engines by. Sure, they burn oil. Yeah, they're very complicated for what they are. But at the same time, there are plenty of these things out there with 250, 300,000 miles on them with proper care. Even modified ones with bigger turbos, all kinds of mods. They are very stout engines, but like any engine, if you treat them wrong, if you work on them like you don't know what you're doing, you don't do any research, and with the modern era of YouTube and all kinds of videos on how to do things the right way or the wrong way, there's very little excuse. Now, I'm all for people working on their own cars, but with all of the information out there available, just do it right, please, very much please. So this engine doesn't have a lot of parts to sell out of it. It's got a whole bunch of desk ornaments. If anybody wants any of those, I'm happy to sell them. It also has a good forged diverter valve. Otherwise, I can't think of one thing that I would be happy selling out of this thing that should go back onto one of these, unless someone else can chime in. I think everything was ruined, and it's going to find its way to the scrap bin or somebody's desk. So if you'd like to buy any parts out of this engine or anything else I've torn down, or no, don't even ask. I'm going to leave our email in the video description. You can also go to importapart.com and peruse our inventory. I've been uploading our parts cars every single week. As always, I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.